On Tuesday, we found out that Robbie Ray will undergo surgery for his flexor injury and unfortunately miss the remainder of the 2023 season. So, where do the Mariners go from here? Well, we have some ideas. Let's talk about it here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Friday, April 28th, 2023. This is Trident Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you rock with us every single day, let us know in the comments below. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon by scanning the QR code right above my head. The link, as well as our social accounts, is also in the description of this episode. And on the show today, we're going to give you our thoughts on what the Mariners can do in the wake of Robbie Ray's season-ending surgery. And if you're watching the show, you know what the deal is, unless you've been living under a rock. Robbie Ray out for the season. His flexor strain has turned into a much larger issue. It was discovered on Tuesday after he met with team doctors to determine if he could resume throwing down in Arizona. They discovered significantly more damage in that throwing arm of his, and he is going to undergo season-ending surgery this week. Maybe he already has. I don't know. So let's start. We're going to talk about what they could do via trade and all that stuff a little later on in the show, and I'm sure that's mostly what you are here for. But let's talk first about what this team, or what this injury really means to this team, and then what the internal options are for them to address the absence of Robbie Ray. So let's start there, Colby.
Yeah, short term, nothing's changed really. Even if Ray was able to throw, and he was going to start that next week, you're still probably looking at 3 to 4 weeks minimum before he's ready to pitch in a big league game. So really, as far as the next month or so goes, basically what you thought it was, 3 days ago. So really not much has changed there. What does change now, though, is obviously the approach to which the Mariners are going to take in filling this whole long term, which admittedly almost certainly has to come from outside the organization. It's just too much to ask for any of these guys to come in and be what you needed Robbie Ray to be, which was at least a number 3 starter. So short term, really not much of a change. You're still going to roll with the same 5 guys, I would imagine. Now, I don't think they should roll with Chris Flexen, but for the time being, it looks like that's what they're going to do. So short term, this really doesn't change much. Beyond this season, it shouldn't change much. It sounds like Ray will almost certainly be ready to go by spring training next year after he gets the surgery. So really, it's just, essentially, how does this impact the Mariners from June until the end of the season, which is about the timeline we were hoping to have Ray back in. And it changes things, obviously. And obviously, we should also recognize that this is a bit of a gut punch to the clubhouse right now, because Robbie was, their best pitcher in spring training. It looked like he was in for a big year. The velocity was up, the slider was sharper, just great vibes around Robbie Ray. And you're looking at the Mariners rotation, you're saying, wow, look, 1 through 4, we can beat anybody in baseball. And it took a big blow. And this is the first major injury that the Mariners have really faced in the last few years. I mean, I guess Mitch Haniger technically qualifies here.
Yeah.
Tom Murphy obviously had a major injury.
Kyle Lewis.
Right, but Murphy and Lewis in particular, not insignificant injuries, but not like you're counting on them to be like all-star quality and obviously right now expectations are higher than they were back then too. So just an overall, it's a blow to the dugout or to the clubhouse. It certainly is. It's a blow to the pitching staff for the rest of the year, but in the interim, not much has changed, in the day-to-day of how the Mariners are going to attack this thing.
So we have a quote here from Jerry DiPoto. This was yesterday morning on 710 Seattle Sports. This is via Brandon Gustafson, one of the reporters over there at Seattle Sports. Quote, we do feel like we have the flexibility and personnel to be able to manage it along the way, and we'll likely do something a little more creative in how we want to solve it. So there's multiple ways that you can take that. To me, what that says is, hey, we can't make a trade right now, but we do
Yep.
feel like Tommy Malone, Darren McCacken, Chris Flexen is going to
Easton
be enough of
McGee.
a bridge to get us to Brian Wu, Bryce Miller, Emerson Hancock, and
Right.
then we're going to have to eventually make a trade. He
Right.
also didn't dismiss the idea of a 6-man rotation, which I don't really know how that fixes anything.
It doesn't.
So, yeah, it
They're not going to
doesn't.
do that.
Yeah.
Unless, you're replacing both Flexen and adding, another rotation spot to get Bryce Miller and Brian Wu, or,
And
Hancock and
Hancock,
Wu,
yeah.
or
Yeah.
whatever. Maybe, but even then you're just taking the ball away from Castillo and Kirby and Gilbert more.
Right.
So
Well, and the
doesn't really
issue
make a lot of
is
sense.
with all of these guys, right? With Miller, with Wu, with Hancock, a lot of these guys just don't have a ton of innings in professional baseball in
Right.
general. And so they're going to be on pretty significant innings caps this year. So you're going to have
Right.
to manage that over the course of the calendar year. You're going to
To
have
be
to
fair,
be conservative with those guys quite a bit.
I mean, to be fair, Kirby was on a similar pitch limit last year, and they managed that really well. And he had plenty of ammo left. He faded in September a little bit,
Right.
but he was able to rebound pretty quickly in October. So I feel like you can trust them to manage this pretty well. The Mariners are not going to put short term gain over their long term goals in this window.
Mm,
But yeah, and Jerry's already said as much in regards to the trade thing. He basically said nobody's trading right now. It
yeah.
doesn't make sense. Like, we would have to so drastically overpay to get somebody to sell right now. It's not even remotely worth it.
But the reason that I bring up the innings in particular is because if you were talking about replacing Robbie Ray's spot in the rotation specifically, this is one of the great innings eaters in all of baseball. The guy who posts every
190
single,
innings. Yeah.
every fifth day, right? You're not going to get that. The answer is not there with your prospects.
Not from one
So,
guy.
not from one guy at the least. So again, that's why maybe the idea of the 6-man rotation in terms of just you keep Flexen involved, but you also try to balance Wu and Hancock and Miller in that spot where they're only going 3-4 innings. Maybe those guys, maybe you have both of those guys up at some point and they piggyback one another. Who knows? But
Yeah.
you're not going to get all of those innings back just from one guy within the organization, not
Right.
from the prospects at least. So
Yeah. I would say, though, that Bryce Miller last year threw 133 innings. It's not absurd to think that you can ask him to do 150 or 160 innings. That's kind of a natural progression. So
mhm,
Miller innings aren't going to be as big of an issue for Miller, but obviously with Wu and Hancock really just starting their first, well, I guess, yeah, really starting their first healthy full seasons since they were
yeah,
drafted, they're going to be limited much more. One other thing worth noting how they might attack this, mention creativity. I think it was either Jason Churchill or Joe Doyle. I can't remember who it was. They kind of plotted out the starts for the rest of the first half, and what they discovered is that there are a lot of opportunities to skip the number 5 spot in your rotation and keep everybody else on normal rest. And I think the final tally was is that they should only have to use their fifth starter 5 or 6 more times between now and the All-Star break. Just kind
mm,
of the way the schedule broke out, which is obviously, very, very nice if you're the Mariners. So if they want to skip a flexing spot, they're going to have some opportunities to do that,
right.
between now and the All-Star break, which really is the time where significant trades become more likely.
Scott Service also after the game a couple nights ago said, we're reevaluating our pitching depth right now.
Yeah, have to.
Any idea what that specifically means though?
No, I don't really have much of an idea because I think you're kind of. I mean, you have 4 guys that you trust, right now,
Mhm.
especially right now with the way Marco's throwing. So it's kind of the 5th spot. Flexen's probably the guy you trust the most right now. So I don't know exactly what Scott could be talking about because, um, Taylor Dollard seems like an obvious guy to call up. He's already in AAA, but he's been pretty rough this year. We know Miller has struggled, and he had a pretty nice outing his last time out. And Hancock was pretty good, but do you really want to jump Hancock to the big leagues right now? Same with Wu. So I think it's more about just kind of like, hey, what do we have at AAA? How do we attack this? Is there a thought that maybe we send Brash down for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and kind of get him back in the rotation? Which I
Well,
say
and that
no,
also
but now
potentially
your bullpen
subtracts from
is
your bullpen. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Now your
So
bullpen is weaker. So I think they're considering all of this. Jerry said today on like that right now they're still working through all the plans. They're still talking to everybody, and they hope to have like a finalized plan of attack
mhm.
by tomorrow. So we'll see. Obviously, this is big news, and it kind of not exactly came out of nowhere, but it did seem like the Mariners really did think that they were going to get Ray back at some point this year, and they're just not. So give them a couple days to kind of formulate a plan here. And I think we'll probably see multiple guys get these starts, get these, like if hypothetically, let's say that they skip them a few times, blah, blah, blah. They skip Ray's spot a few times. And let's just say they need 8 more starts
Mhm.
between now and the All-Star break from this spot. I think we'll probably see 2 or 3 different guys get those starts.
So teams are just not going to be willing to trade right now. But how soon, realistically, could we see the Mariners make a trade for a starting pitcher? We'll talk about that in just a moment. But real quick, a reminder: this episode of Locked On Mariners is brought to you by Rocket Money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills all in one place. Over 80% of people have subscriptions they forgot about, and chances are you're one of them. Rocket Money will quickly and easily find your subscriptions for you. And for any you don't want to pay for anymore, just hit cancel and Rocket Money will cancel it for you. It's that easy. Rocket Money also helps you manage all your finances in one place and automatically categorize your expenses so you can easily track your budget in real time and also get alerted if anything looks off. Over 3 million people have used Rocket Money, saving the average person up to $720 a year. So stop throwing your money away. Cancel unwanted subscriptions and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/lockedonmlb. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedonmlb. rocketmoney.com/lockedonmlb. This episode of Locked On Mariners is also brought to you by Game Time. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. So forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. I bought my tickets for all 3 games of this weekend series with the Blue Jays and the Mariners through Game Time. It's a great app, so check it out for sure. All right, this is the part of the show where we tell the fine folks what we got going on with our Feeding America fundraiser. We are recording this, of course, right after we did the post-game show for yesterday's game on Thursday, or today for us. So not much has changed on that front from our end. Maybe we've gotten a big donation since then, hopefully, fingers crossed. And we're even closer to 16K, 17K, 18K, who knows? But right now, as we're recording this, we're at about $15.1 thousand donated, and or a little over 150,000 meals raised for those in need. So Colby, tell our listeners here, anyone who might not know or anyone who's still interested in supporting the cause, what Feeding America does and what we're doing to help solve food insecurity in America.
Well, Ty, Feeding America is a fantastic organization that turns every dollar raised into 10 delicious, nutritious meals from those facing food insecurity. How many people could possibly be facing food insecurity in the United States? About 1 in 10, 34 million people suffer from food insecurity every single day in this country, including 9 million children. If you guys want to donate to help provide meals for those who need them the most, go ahead and scan the QR code on the screen right now. Or if you're just listening, the link to our donation page will be in the description of whatever platform you're listening on right now. As Ty mentioned, I think we're over 15,000 as we're recording this. We'll see where we're at, but the fundraiser officially ends on Monday or Sunday at midnight. So, this is kind of the last weekend. We'll see how high we can push this thing. Our original goal was $500. You guys have already, you surpassed that on day one. And now obviously we pushed past even our wildest goal of $10,000 raised, which is why that guy over there is going to get a tattoo, which we will keep you guys in the loop on. He's already made some contacts and whatnot, and we'll keep you guys in the loop on that.
Yeah, can I just make a note on that? So
Sure.
I've emailed a tattoo artist, someone that I've been keeping an eye on for a couple of years. I really have appreciated their work. I've been following them on Instagram for a while. They are very popular though, which means that they're pretty booked. So it might be like a month or so before I'm actually able to get in there and see her. So just letting you know.
Any,
I'm gonna do it as soon as I possibly can get in there. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, we'll keep you updated on that, guys. But again, so if you want to donate, and you haven't yet, scan the QR code, click the link in the description. If you have donated, also remember that Ty and I are donating 10 cents for every new subscriber that we get during our fundraiser here. We're around 500 new subs since we started this. So that right there is 500 meals just from clicking a button. So thank you so much for all of that. And if you've already done all that, share the video, share the link with your friends, your family, coworkers, put it on your social media. Anything helps. And while you're at it, maybe if you've already donated, go ask your employer if they will match your donation. Apparently a lot of companies will do that. So it's been a great, fun, exciting journey so far. And we look forward to doing more fundraiser type of things later in the future. But for now, we got a weekend left. So let's finish strong and let's raise even more money and give the hungry even more meals. It's truly incredible what this community has done over the last month.
Yeah, and this is the last episode we're doing this spiel. Next episode on Monday, we'll tell you what the final tally was after our own personal donations from the subscriber count and all that. So we'll go over that, but that's going to be a wrap pretty much on this fundraiser. And thank you guys a ton from the bottom of our hearts for the amazing response to this. This has been truly incredible. And like Colby said, we are planning on doing more stuff like this in the near future to help folks in need, because that was, when you and I first started really podcasting together like this, like we are now, that was one of our main goals, was to start doing stuff like this. And so we want to get back to that because we kind of got away from it for a little while. All right, so let's talk about trades, because that's ultimately, that's where we're heading with this. At the end of the day, the Mariners are going to have to go out and add a starter that is, pretty close to what Robbie Ray was, if not equal, if not potentially better. Because what's the point in acquiring someone like, all right, the name that I've seen a lot on Twitter, Brad Keller. What's the point in acquiring him when you can pretty much get equal value out of the guys that you already have in the organization, and you don't have to give up anything for that? So
you have Brad Keller at home, and his name is Taylor Dollard. You don't need a number 5 starter. That's not what you're replacing. You need at least a mid rotation, at the very least a strong number 4. But I think you're aiming for a number 3. Probably not quite as lofty as Luis Castillo, but certainly more than Tyler Anderson.
Agreed. So the thing, though, the issue with that is timing, right? We've said it. No one's going to be open to trading. Even the A's, who are a complete dumpster fire right now, not like they have anything to offer you anyway, but they're not even likely to trade anyone from their major league roster right now. So, and that's the other issue, right? Any of these teams that are going to be close, or that are teetering on being eliminated already, basically waving the white flag already, they're so bad that they don't have anything that's worth trading for, really, at least on the starting pitching front. The one team that I look at is the Chicago White Sox, and we'll talk about them in a bit because we've talked about them on our Patreon. But to you, let me just ask you this first. To you, what is feasibly the earliest we could see the Mariners swing a legitimate, significant deal for a starting pitcher?
The absolute earliest, probably after Memorial Day weekend. So June, early June is probably the earliest. There's been, a handful of major deals that have gone down in June, so it's certainly not impossible, but I think that's the absolute earliest, more than likely, because of the demand of pitching every year in the summer. Probably closer to the All-Star break is most realistic. So, in terms of just like an impactful, like Ty and I are breaking in to do an emergency pod type of
Yeah.
acquisition, although right now we might do that anyways. But I would say the absolute earliest is somewhere early in June. So you have at least a month
Yeah.
before you can really do before teams will even entertain selling.
The Mariners acquired Carlos Santana in June. They acquired Denard Span and Alex Colome at the end of May.
Yeah,
That's about the earliest that you could expect. And that was a very rare deal. You never see trades
that
like
was a
that get
salary
made
dump. Yeah,
that early. Which is wild to do in the middle of the season, mid-season salary dump, like May, like, all right, trade deadline salary dump, sure, but like end of May salary dump is wild. That is wild stuff. The Rays are
worked out pretty well
crazy.
for both
That worked
teams.
out. Really well for the Mariners in particular.
Yep,
Denard Span, one of the most underrated Mariners of the last decade. Awesome, love him.
it's here for like 90 games, but sure,
He was fun. He was fun, man.
he's a good player. Yeah,
He
good
was
player.
really fun. He was a good player. Alex Colome, obviously, really solid as well.
hmm
So yeah, so the White Sox really are the team that I look at right now because as we're recording this, they're what 7-18, I believe. They're
Yep.
really skidding. Their roster just makes no sense from the just the way that it's constructed. It sucks. A lot of their, especially from an offensive perspective or from a position player perspective, rather, a lot of these guys are just first base DH types. It's very Jack Sorensic esque.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Somehow less athletic though.
somehow
Like,
that's quite a feat to accomplish. By the way,
yeah,
yeah,
we're talking about on a nightly basis. There's probably 4 or 5 first base slash DH type only types in the everyday lineup for the White Sox. So yeah, not a lot of athleticism. The pitching is certainly not what it was a few years ago, and yeah, it's not a good team.
all right, so let's talk about some potential targets on the Chicago White Sox in just a moment. But real quick, a reminder, this episode of Locked On Mariners is brought to you by Ultimate Baseball GM. Ever dreamed of becoming an MLB GM and managing your professional baseball franchise? Well, your dream can come true, and this game is definitely for you. Manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through the season, and lead your team to glory. You're responsible for hiring the right coaches and staff, managing team finances, scouting and drafting players, managing difficult personalities, navigating your franchise through free agency, and all the ups and downs of a season. All this in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Baseball GM is completely free and playable offline, or you can play on the go as you want and when you want. It's basically the Jerry Dipoto simulator. So instead of saying Chills, Dipoto did it again, you can now say Chills, I did it again. Download it now, and Locked On Mariners listeners get a free or 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On in the game store. So make sure to check it out. To download the game, just visit probaseballgm.com, scan the code, or look it up on the app stores. That's probaseballgm.com. Ultimate Baseball GM. Start your dynasty today. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. And a reminder for you guys that might not be able to watch tonight's game between the Mariners and Blue Jays, you can catch it on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. So check that out. All right. So I mentioned Jerry Dipoto. I mentioned Chills. He did it again. He's going to have to do it again this summer at some point to address the starting rotation. And I think one way that he can do that is with the Chicago White Sox. I think they make for a pretty good trade partner. So let's dive into some potential targets on this team because there's quite a lot of them, not just within the starting rotation, but that's where we'll mostly focus here. So what do the White Sox have, Colby, that the Mariners could potentially want?
Yeah, 2 names really stand out in terms of starting pitchers: Lance Lynn and Lucas Giolito. Giolito's probably going to be maybe not. I don't think either one of them is going to be incredibly difficult to obtain. Giolito is a rental, and he's been okay this year. Not great, not back to his Cy Young contender selves, but he's been pretty good this year, and he certainly carries the upside of the mid rotation guy that you're looking for. Lynn has been struggling a bit. He was hurt last year and wasn't great. So Lynn and Giolito, they're both kind of that mid rotation guy. Both have upside. Both are potential long term fits, but probably just rentals. And both are going to be reasonably priced, assuming the White Sox aren't the dumbest team in Major League Baseball, which, eh. So we'll see. But I think those are the two guys. Like Dylan Cease isn't getting traded. It's like, don't even bother reading any articles or listening to any podcast that tells you Dylan Cease is available. Like, just stop. That's not going to happen. We can't hear you, Ty. So anyways, yes, I think those are the two guys. There's a lot of bullpen guys here on this team that work too, but I think, honestly, it's Giolito and it's Lance Lynn and kind of everybody else. Ty, you back? Nope, you are not. Fantastic. Okay. Oh, there you are.
Oh, am I here? Nope.
Yep.
Yep.
Here.
Am I here?
There you
I'm
go.
here. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
See,
we're too lazy.
Technical
to edit that
issues.
out.
Yeah. We're
Yeah.
leaving that in. Yeah.
Yeah. Are we doing a live? Like, are we dropping this like a premiere or whatever tomorrow morning? And he's gone again. So this is fantastic. And now he's back. So
Am I
this
back?
is just great. Yeah, this is just great podcasting.
This is amazing podcasting. We're professionals, folks. We are professionals. Okay, so the interesting thing on Lance Lynn, if you can still hear me, you can still hear me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The interesting thing on Lance Lynn is that he carries an $18 million club option for 2024, which is appealing to me if he gets back on track. But again, you also really don't have much to lose here. Let me see what the buyout is real quick on that. If you don't want to pick it up, if you don't want to pay the $18 million, it's $1 million. So $1 million to tell him to go away if he doesn't pan out, great. And for $18 million, if he gets back on track, that's a steal for Lance Lynn. So I'm super on board with the Lynn idea more so than the Giolito idea, even though it's probably going to be more expensive for Lynn just because of the track record and the fact that he does have an extra year of club control technically. Because, I mean, Giolito right now, you're going to get him for 3 to 4 months. He's going to hit free agency, and he's really struggled as of late. Yeah, he's been a bit better this year, but I would bank on Lynn bouncing back and being closer to what you really need out of this rotation than Giolito.
Would you rather trade Brian Wu for Lance Lynn,
right,
or Taylor Trammell for Lucas Giolito? And he's gone. So you keep working on that, Ty. Yeah, so we're probably gonna have to wrap soon. One other name I'll throw out there. I know we're talking about the White Sox, but since I need to vamp, since Ty can't figure his stuff out, it's a name that Ty and I both liked quite a bit last offseason. There you go. How about Eduardo Rodriguez of the Detroit Tigers?
Ooh.
Now, that is a much longer term commitment. I don't think there's an opt out in that deal. So it's going to be 4 or 5 years, but I think that's a guy who makes a lot of sense. He made sense a few years ago, and they ended up signing Robbie Ray instead, which I would say worked out. But Rodriguez is an interesting guy. Detroit is an absolute dumpster fire as well. They might be looking to skim a little bit of money off of their payroll. So yeah, there's going to be options. There are going to be number threes out there. Maybe Kyle Gibson if like Baltimore starts to slide or something like that, and Jack Flaherty possibly if the Cardinals continue to slump. So there's going to be Alex Wood. There's going to be options out there that we just don't anticipate right now because teams are going to slide back.
Alex Cobb is another one potentially.
Yeah. So teams are going to, pitchers will emerge. Teams that are hot right now, they'll slide back, and we'll have a better idea of who's actually going to be available around mid-June. But in terms of who's likely to be available, I think the White Sox are a really good fit, not just for the starting pitcher, but specifically for this episode. I think Giolito and Lynn make a lot of sense.
Well, and also the White Sox might be your best opportunity to hit that window of trading sometime in late May or early June, because they are 7-18 right now. And there's a lot of pressure from that fan base right now as well. So if it's not working out, they need to do something. They need to pivot in some sort of way. And I think that starts with selling off some of the guys that are about to hit free agency or just don't fit the long-term plan there in Chicago.
Right. And honestly, I think what the Mariners have to offer, they have pitching to offer, which I think the White Sox will be interested in, but the White Sox need athleticism. They need athletes.
Yeah.
And I think, in particular, probably maybe not as a primary piece, maybe a secondary piece. I think somebody like Cade Marlowe would make a tremendous amount of sense for the White Sox, just because they need athleticism, they need upside, and they probably aren't looking for guys who are 3 or 4 years away. So we'll see how Marlowe looks for the rest of the
Right.
year, and obviously we'll see how Giolito and Lynn really pitch for the next few weeks here. But I think something in the neighborhood of, for Lynn, I think maybe Wu and Marlowe is a pretty good start, and you just kind of go for there. But I think the White Sox are, if you're looking for a team that has the pitching you want, or in theory has the pitching you want, and might actually be willing to trade, by the end of next month, or the middle of June, I think it's
Right.
the White Sox.
Right. And you might be able to add on someone like Joe Kelly or Kendall Graveman or
Right.
whatever on top of that to address your
Yohan
bullpen as well,
Moncada.
or Yohan Moncada.
Mhm.
And
Tim
make a bigger deal.
Anderson.
Make a bigger deal out of that
Right.
as well. So, there's a lot of possibilities there with the White Sox.
Mhm.
I'd be pretty surprised if the Mariners didn't end up making a trade with them at some point before the deadline.
Yeah.
Because it makes so much sense on paper.
Mhm. They have some good, DH/bench bats too. You talk about
It's like
Jake
the
Berger.
Reds the last year or so,
Yeah,
where
they
it's
just
just
match
like it just
really well.
feels inevitable that these two teams are going to come together. And
Right.
sure enough, the Mariners and Reds made like a billion trades together over the
Yeah.
last 12 months.
Right.
So
The timelines match up. The excess of what you have and versus what you need match up pretty well. And yeah, the White Sox, aside from Giolito and Lynn, Jake Berger is going to be kind of interesting. Gavin Sheets would be interesting. Eloy Jimenez would be interesting. Maybe we'll see. In pretty much most of that bullpen, if not all of that bullpen, the couple of starters. Yasmani Grandal, Tim Anderson, Yohan Moncada. Like, there's a lot of players that match up with the White Sox, and so I, for one, would not be shocked. As I tries to do something here, I, for one, would not be shocked if the Mariners do swing a multiple player deal with the Whites, between the White Sox and the Mariners. So
mhm.
we'll see. A lot can happen. But for all we know, the White Sox are about to go on a 14-game win streak.
Yeah. All
For
right.
all we know, the Mariners aren't going to even be buyers in July.
That's true.
Seems
It's good.
unlikely, but it's possible. So we'll have
It's
to wait and
true.
see where we're at. But I think if you're looking for which team is going to have the means and the opportunity to sell in, late May, early June, I think it's the White Sox right now are the most likely.
All right, let me try to do this outro before my mic disconnects again. It's reading it on GarageBand, but not on Restream for some reason. I don't know why. So it's a Restream thing. Blame Restream. That's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. I've been your host, Trident Gonzalez, joined as always by Colby Patnode. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Dane Gonzalez, that's DaneGnzlz, and my co-host Colby over at CPAT11, that's CPAT11. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok as well over at Locked On Mariners. That's one word, Locked On Mariners. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. And thank you again for making us your first listen. And with that, have yourself a beautiful baseball day and a beautiful baseball weekend. And we'll see you next week. Peace.